Wealth isn't just about luck, inheritance, or some mysterious formula. It's about patterns, mindset, and actions repeated with discipline. The reason some people attract wealth much faster than others isn't because they're smarter, it's because they've learned to see opportunities differently, think differently, and act differently. Let me show you the four keys that can completely transform the speed at which you build wealth. When you think about attracting wealth, the first thing people usually picture is money itself. They imagine higher salaries, bigger business deals, or sudden windfalls that change everything. But the truth is, wealth doesn't start with those things. It doesn't begin in the outer world, it begins in the inner world. Before you can ever hold it in your hands, you have to hold it in your mind, and that's why mindset is the very first step. If you don't shift how you think about wealth, no amount of income or opportunity will ever stick with you. It'll slip away because your foundation wasn't ready to hold it. Most people grow up with a scarcity mindset, and they don't even realize it. They're trained to believe that money is limited, that it's hard to get, that success is reserved for a few lucky people who have some special advantage. This thinking traps them into living paycheck to paycheck, chasing stability instead of freedom. But if you look closely at those who build wealth far faster than the rest, they operate from a completely different mental framework. They understand that money flows to those who create value, that opportunities are everywhere if you're trained to see them, and that the biggest limitation isn't the size of the economy or the conditions of the world, it's the boundaries you've placed around your own thinking. Think about it like this. The economy is like an ocean, and money is the water. Some people dip their hands in and complain that they can only carry a few drops. Others build buckets, barrels, or pipelines. What's the difference between them? It's not that one person was born with better luck. It's that one person built the mental capacity to see abundance and design systems that could hold more. The wealthy don't think in terms of limitation, they think in terms of expansion. And that shift is available to anyone who's willing to reprogram their beliefs. Reprogramming starts with awareness. If every time you face a challenge, your instinct is fear, hesitation, or retreat, you'll never move quickly enough to build momentum. Fear slows people down. It makes them cling to security, even when security keeps them stuck. The wealthy move differently because they've trained themselves to treat challenges as teachers, not threats. When they lose, they don't collapse, they analyze. When they fail, they don't stop, they extract lessons and move forward faster. Every loss becomes tuition for success. That kind of thinking compounds over time. The person who treats life as a classroom accelerates wealth building because they're not paralyzed by setbacks, they're fueled by them. There's also the question of self-worth. So many people sabotage their financial progress because deep down they don't believe they deserve wealth. They might say they want success, but when opportunity comes, they hesitate, thinking, who am I to step into this? Who am I to ask for more? That inner doubt keeps them playing small. Contrast that with those who move fast. They've internalized a belief that wealth is a natural byproduct of creating value. They don't feel guilty about seeking it. They see it as earned, as proof of contribution, as fuel for greater impact. That's a mindset shift you have to make if you want to accelerate. Wealth doesn't flow to people who second guess their own worth. It flows to those who are certain they can handle it and multiply it. Another piece of the mindset puzzle is long-term vision. Most people are short-term thinkers. They want instant gratification, immediate reward, quick comfort, and in chasing that, they trade away the compounding effect that builds true wealth. Someone with the right mindset understands that the faster path is actually the long game, because while others waste years bouncing between short-term pleasures, the person with vision invests time and energy into habits and decisions that compound. When you're building wealth, compounding is everything, but you won't stick with compounding unless your mind is anchored in the future, not trapped in the present. This is where discipline ties in with mindset. Discipline isn't about restricting yourself, it's about aligning your actions with your bigger vision. If your mind is trained to crave immediate satisfaction, you'll sabotage your wealth building journey at every turn. But if your mindset is anchored in the belief that small sacrifices today equal massive gains tomorrow, you'll endure what others can't. And because most people quit, the field clears and your acceleration begins. That's why a mindset rooted in patience, resilience, and long term payoff is the hidden accelerator of wealth. There's also the question of how you see risk. The average person views risk as something to avoid at all costs. They're terrified of losing money, terrified of failure, terrified of stepping outside the norm. And so they move cautiously, slowly, often not at all. But the wealthy think about risk differently. They see it as necessary tuition. They calculate it, manage it, and use it as a tool. They understand that without stepping into uncertainty, you'll never break past mediocrity. Mindset, again, is what separates the two. One person sees risk and freezes. Another sees risk and asks, how do I make this asymmetric? How do I make the upside bigger than the downside? That way of thinking doesn't just attract opportunities, it multiplies them. Here's the key: money amplifies who you already are. If you're fearful, undisciplined, and doubtful, then money will only magnify those qualities and it will slip away. If you're confident, strategic, and growth oriented, money will multiply those qualities and it will expand. That's why the mindset has to come first. You can't shortcut this part because it's the foundation on which everything else is built. So if you want to attract wealth faster than most people, stop obsessing over external tactics first. Stop asking, what's the best stock to buy? What's the quick business idea? What's the fastest income stream? Those things matter, but they're useless if your mind is unprepared. Start by reshaping how you see money, how you see yourself, how you see failure, how you see time, and how you see risk. Train your mind to think in terms of abundance, ownership, leverage, and compounding. Anchor your identity in the belief that wealth is both possible and natural for you. Once you make that internal shift, the external strategies won't just work better, they'll work faster because you won't hesitate when opportunity comes. You won't self sabotage when you start winning. You won't get paralyzed when setbacks hit. You'll move with a clarity and conviction that most people never reach. And that is why mindset is the first and most powerful accelerator of wealth. If you look at the difference between people who build wealth slowly and those who build it rapidly, one of the biggest distinctions is where they stand in the system, whether they are consumers or owners. Most people live their entire lives on the consumer side of the equation. They spend money, they buy products, they rent time, they use services, and at the end of the day, everything they've earned flows out to someone else who owns the thing they're consuming. That cycle never ends because they never step back to ask themselves a fundamental question: who is on the other side of this transaction? Who is the person benefiting every time I spend? The truth is, the people who attract wealth far faster than most are the ones who intentionally move to the ownership side. Ownership is the great accelerator. When you own, you stop trading time for money and instead create systems where money works for you. You stop being the end user and start being the provider. You stop living off wages and start building assets. Ownership is what creates leverage, compounding, and scalability. Consumers remain trapped in linear progress while owners unlock exponential growth. Think about the simplest example: a subscription. Millions of people pay monthly fees for streaming services, gyms, apps, and other conveniences. Each of them is a consumer, paying out steadily. On the other side, a relatively small number of owners collect all those small payments, month after month, without lifting additional effort. The same principle plays out across every part of the economy. If you rent an apartment, you're a consumer. The landlord is the owner. If you buy a product, you're the consumer. The business is the owner. The flow of wealth is designed to move from the consumer to the owner. Once you recognize this, the question becomes, how long will you stay on the consumer side? And when will you cross the line into ownership? What accelerates wealth isn't working harder as a consumer, it's shifting roles entirely. Most people believe that if they just earn more wages or pick up more hours, they'll get ahead. But wages alone rarely create wealth because they're capped by your time and energy. No matter how hard you work, there are only 24 hours in a day, and only so much one person can do. Owners, however, operate differently. They design structures where other people's time, other people's skills, and other people's money create value that flows back to them. That's why someone who learns ownership early can outpace someone who spends decades grinding as a consumer. Now, ownership doesn't always mean running a giant company. It can start small with accessible steps. Owning a share of a business through the stock market, owning a rental property, owning intellectual property that earns royalties, owning a digital product, owning a piece of technology that generates passive income. These are all forms of ownership. What matters isn't the size, it's the shift in orientation. The moment you stop asking, what should I buy, and start asking, what can I own? Your relationship with money changes. You start aligning yourself with the flow of wealth, not against it. This mental shift is uncomfortable for most people because ownership comes with responsibility and uncertainty. Consumers like the illusion of safety, predictable bills, predictable paychecks, predictable routines. Ownership feels riskier, but what people fail to see is that being only a consumer is actually the riskier path because it leaves you dependent. When inflation rises, consumers suffer. When jobs are cut, consumers panic. Owners, however, adapt and often benefit in those same conditions. The economy is structured to reward those who provide and penalize those who only consume. Another key insight is that ownership multiplies through compounding. When you own, your wealth creates more wealth. For example, if you own shares in a company, you benefit from dividends and growth. If you own a property, you benefit from rental income and appreciation. If you own a business, you benefit from profits and scalability. Each form of ownership has layers of compounding built into it. Consumers never experience this effect. Their money leaves them permanently with every purchase, while owners see their money grow through every reinvestment. Over time, this compounding is what makes the gap between owners and consumers so wide that it looks like they're living in entirely different realities. One of the traps people fall into is believing they can't be owners until they have a large sum of money. They think ownership is reserved for the wealthy, but in today's world, the barrier to entry has never been lower. You can buy fractional shares of stock for a few dollars. You can create a digital product that costs almost nothing to produce, but can be sold infinitely. You can build an online brand, intellectual property, or content that becomes an asset. You can collaborate with others to pool resources into something larger. Ownership is about mindset and action, not just capital. Those who move quickly understand that the earlier you start, the more compounding works in your favor. Waiting until you feel ready is the same as choosing to stay a consumer. And then there's the emotional side of ownership. When you own something, you begin to think differently. You don't just follow trends, you analyze them. You don't just complain about problems, you look for solutions to monetize. You don't just spend money automatically, you question whether that same money could be invested into an asset. Ownership reshapes your entire decision-making process. It forces you to think long-term, to be more responsible, and to see opportunities where others only see expenses. That shift in perception alone makes you faster because you start seeing doors that others don't even notice. The ultimate goal isn't to eliminate consumption. Everyone consumes. The goal is to ensure that for every role you play as a consumer, you play another role as an owner. If you use a streaming service, maybe you also own stock in the company. If you rent, maybe you also save toward buying property. If you buy technology, maybe you also invest in the companies building it. That balance ensures you're not just on the losing side of the equation, but participating in the winning side as well. Wealth accelerates to owners because they create the conditions that money flows through. Consumers hand money over, owners receive it. Consumers depend on stability, owners thrive in growth. Consumers measure their progress by what they can afford. Owners measure theirs by what they can build. Once you internalize this, you realize that every financial decision is a vote. Am I reinforcing my identity as a consumer, or am I building my future as an owner? And this is why ownership is not just about money, it's about freedom. The faster you step into ownership, the faster you detach from dependence. Ownership buys you time, autonomy, and choice. It allows you to shape your life instead of being shaped by the demands of others. That's why the people who move into ownership early look like they're on a different track altogether, because they are. They're accelerating while others are stuck in a cycle. So if you want to attract wealth faster than most, you have to flip the script. Stop asking, how do I spend my money? Start asking, how do I position my money, my time, and my energy so that I own something that keeps giving back? That is the step that takes you from running in circles to running ahead of the pack. Ownership is the great divider, and the earlier you embrace it, the sooner you'll feel the difference in your speed, your freedom, and your wealth. Do you want me to continue and expand key point 3 into 1,000 words in the same voice and flow so the full speech builds momentum? You said, key point 3. Expend it in 1,000 words of Ray Dalio voice style and without heading. ChatGPT says, if you want to understand why some people accelerate toward wealth while others move slowly or never get there at all, you have to look at the role of leverage. Most people go through life relying only on their own effort, their own time, their own energy. That path is limited by design because one person can only do so much. You wake up, you go to work, you put in the hours, you earn your paycheck, and then the next day you start again from zero. That's the slow lane. Leverage is what moves you into the fast lane because it allows you to multiply your output far beyond what you could achieve alone. Leverage is about getting more done with the same amount of input, or better yet, getting exponentially more done with less input. It's the force that allows one person to accomplish the work of hundreds, to influence thousands, to earn while sleeping, to scale beyond the constraints of time. If you study those who attract wealth quickly, you'll notice they are masters of leverage. They don't try to do everything themselves. They don't think in terms of addition. They think in terms of multiplication. There are different forms of leverage, and each one can completely transform the trajectory of your life. The first and most obvious is financial leverage. Most people fear debt and avoid it completely. They see it as a trap, and for consumers, it is a trap. Because they borrow to buy things that depreciate, things that don't generate income. But for owners, debt can be a tool, a way to acquire assets that appreciate and produce cash flow. When used wisely, other people's money becomes an accelerator, a property purchased with financing, a business expanded with capital, or investments made with borrowed resources. All of these create wealth faster than relying solely on your own limited savings. Financial leverage, when managed intelligently, is one of the most powerful multipliers available. Then there's the leverage of people. Alone, you can only push so far. But when you build a team, you extend your reach. Every person you collaborate with adds skills, energy, and time that compound with your own. This is why businesses can grow much faster than solo efforts. A single entrepreneur may work tirelessly, but a team of 10 aligned around the same mission can produce outcomes at a speed that one person could never match. People who understand this stop trying to be the hero who does everything themselves. They become leaders, organizers, visionaries who align the efforts of others to create massive impact. Another form of leverage is technology. We live in an age where tools exist that can magnify your productivity by orders of magnitude. A single message can reach millions through digital platforms. A piece of software can automate tasks that used to require teams of people. A product created once can be sold an infinite number of times online without additional cost. The individuals who build wealth quickly are those who embrace technology as a multiplier rather than resisting it. They ask, how can I use tools to expand my reach? How can I build systems that keep working even when I'm not? Technology is one of the most scalable forms of leverage because it doesn't tire, it doesn't complain, and it doesn't stop. There's also the leverage of networks. Most people underestimate the compounding power of relationships. They view networking as superficial or opportunistic. But networks, when built authentically, are one of the greatest accelerators of wealth. The right connection can open doors to opportunities you would never find on your own. One introduction can lead to partnerships, funding, or deals that catapult you forward. Those who build wealth fast understand that their net worth often mirrors the strength of their network. They invest time into building relationships, not just extracting value, but creating it. They understand that being in the right circles accelerates progress because you gain access to knowledge, trust, and opportunities at a scale no individual effort could provide. The key is that leverage doesn't just save time, it changes the speed of the game entirely. Without leverage, you move linearly. You put in X hours, you get Y results. With leverage, you move exponentially. You put in X hours, but your systems, your capital, your team, and your network keep producing results long after you've stopped working. That's why someone with a clear understanding of leverage can accomplish in 5 years what takes others 20. Of course, leverage comes with responsibility. It can amplify mistakes just as quickly as it amplifies successes. If you take on debt recklessly, it will bury you. If you hire people without clarity or leadership, you'll create chaos. If you misuse technology, you'll waste time instead of saving it. If you treat networks as tools instead of relationships, they'll collapse. That's why mastery of leverage requires not only ambition, but wisdom. You need to understand the rules of the game and apply them with discipline. Leverage is like fire. It can cook your food or burn your house down, depending on how you use it. Another obstacle is that most people are conditioned to fear leverage. They've been told their whole lives to play it safe, avoid risk, and never extend themselves beyond what they can directly control. This conditioning keeps them moving slowly, trapped by their own limitations. The wealthy think differently. They don't eliminate risk, they manage it. They don't avoid leverage, they master it. They see leverage as the only way to escape the limits of time, and they treat risk as tuition for speed. They understand that the greater risk is in staying small, staying slow, staying trapped in the cycle of linear effort. The mental shift you have to make is this: stop asking, how much can I do? And start asking, how can I design this so it multiplies? When you face a task, don't just think about how to complete it. Think about how to build a system so it completes itself next time. When you earn money, don't just think about how to spend it. Think about how to put it into something that earns more on its own. When you meet someone, don't just think about what you can gain. Think about how to build a relationship that compounds value for both sides over time. That's leverage thinking, and it's what separates those who move fast from those who crawl. In the end, wealth is less about effort and more about structure. You can spend a lifetime working hard and still move slowly if you never apply leverage. Or you can spend a fraction of that time building systems, aligning people, using capital, embracing technology, and growing networks, and watch your results explode in speed and scale. That's why leverage is the great divider. It's not optional if you want to accelerate, it's essential. So, if you want to attract wealth way faster than most, you need to embrace leverage in every form. Use financial tools strategically, build teams that extend your reach, harness technology to automate and scale, cultivate networks that open doors, and most importantly, develop the mindset that asks not, how do I do this myself, but how do I make this multiply? That question changes everything. It changes the way you use your time, your money, your energy, and your relationships. It forces you to build systems, not just solutions. And that's what puts you in the fast lane. Leverage is the accelerator pedal of wealth. Most people never press it, but if you learn how to use it, you'll cover ground in years that others won't reach in a lifetime. And once you've experienced that kind of speed, you'll never go back to moving slowly again. When you study people who accumulate wealth at an extraordinary pace, you'll notice something that seems almost invisible at first. It's not that they always have the best ideas, or that they're the smartest in the room, or even that they take the boldest risks. Those things matter, but the real differentiator, the thing that consistently separates the fast movers from everyone else, is their discipline and their consistency. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's relentless. And it's the single most important trait that sustains speed over the long run. Most people underestimate the role of consistency because they're addicted to bursts of energy. They get inspired, they start with intensity, they make bold resolutions. For a week or a month, they're on fire, but then life interrupts, motivation fades, and they slip back into old patterns. That cycle keeps them trapped. They confuse short-term excitement with long-term commitment, and as a result, their wealth-building process resets over and over again. Compare that to the individual who builds discipline into their daily actions, who doesn't wait for motivation but acts because it's who they are. That person moves faster because they never stop moving forward. Even small, steady steps compound into massive acceleration when repeated consistently. Discipline is about aligning your daily behavior with your larger vision. It's about saying no when it's easier to say yes. It's about continuing when others quit. It's about building habits so ingrained that they carry you even on the days you don't feel like pushing forward. The truth is, discipline is freedom. It looks like restriction from the outside, but in reality, it's what liberates you from chaos and inconsistency. Without discipline, you're at the mercy of your moods and circumstances. With it, you control the pace, no matter what's happening around you. Take money, for example. Most people spend emotionally. If they feel good, they buy more. If they're stressed, they buy to escape. Their financial lives are driven by impulses. The disciplined person, however, has a system. They save and invest automatically. They don't need to debate with themselves every month because they've already decided once and locked it in. Over time, that simple act creates an enormous gap. One person leaks money through inconsistency, the other builds wealth steadily without drama. It doesn't happen overnight, but it happens faster than people realize because compounding doesn't forgive inconsistency, it punishes it. The same applies to learning. Building wealth requires knowledge about markets, about opportunities, about human behavior. The average person learns in bursts. They read a book, they watch a video, they attend a seminar, then they stop. Their knowledge stays shallow. The disciplined person commits to lifelong learning. They read daily, they reflect, they take notes, they study patterns. And because they do it consistently, their understanding deepens in ways that others can't catch up to. Knowledge compounds just like money, but only if you feed it consistently. Then there's health. Wealth is meaningless without the energy to use it. The disciplined person understands this. They train their body, they eat with intention, they prioritize rest, not perfectly, but consistently. And that consistency gives them endurance. They can work longer, think clearer, handle stress better. Meanwhile, the inconsistent person burns out, gets sick, loses momentum. Again, the difference in consistency creates a difference in speed. Discipline also applies to decision making. When you're disciplined, you don't chase every shiny object. You commit to a strategy and execute it. The undisciplined mind is scattered. It jumps from one idea to another, chasing trends, reacting to noise. That constant switching kills momentum. The disciplined mind filters opportunities, focuses on what matters, and compounds results by sticking with it long enough to see real payoff. It's not that disciplined people never change course. It's that when they do, it's intentional, not emotional. The challenge is that consistency is boring. It doesn't give you quick dopamine hits. It often feels slow in the moment. But here's the paradox. What feels slow is actually what makes you fast. Because while most people waste years restarting, the consistent person builds layer upon layer without interruption. Imagine two people digging a well. One digs a few feet here, then gets bored and starts another hole somewhere else. Years later, they have dozens of shallow pits, none deep enough to reach water. The disciplined person digs in the same spot every day. At first, it looks like they're moving slowly, but eventually they hit water, and suddenly they have what the others never found. That's how consistency works with wealth. Discipline also protects you from emotional mistakes. In wealth building, the biggest destroyer of speed is impulsive decisions, selling too early, buying too late, quitting too soon. The disciplined person sticks to their plan. They keep investing when markets are down. They keep building when conditions are tough. They keep showing up when enthusiasm fades. Because of that, they benefit from cycles instead of being broken by them. The undisciplined person rides the roller coaster of emotions and never compounds long enough to see true acceleration. It's worth remembering that discipline doesn't mean perfection. No one is perfect. You will miss days, make mistakes, fall short, but discipline means you come back quickly. You don't let a bad day become a bad week or a bad week become a bad year. Consistency is about averages. If you're consistent 80% of the time, you're still light years ahead of the person who's on and off endlessly. The goal isn't never missing, it's always returning. That mindset keeps momentum alive, and momentum is everything. When you look at people who seem to move unbelievably fast toward wealth, it's tempting to think they have some secret advantage. Often the secret is simply that they stayed consistent longer than anyone else. They kept planting seeds and watering them while others gave up. They built habits around saving, investing, learning, building, and connecting, and those habits compounded into results that look almost magical from the outside. But there's nothing mystical about it. It's discipline, repeated relentlessly. So if you want to attract wealth way faster than most, ask yourself not, what's the fastest shortcut? But what can I commit to consistently, day after day, year after year? Because shortcuts fade, but systems built on discipline endure. Build routines that lock in saving and investing. Build daily learning habits. Build structures around your health and energy. Build a framework for decision making that filters noise. And most importantly, stick with it when it gets boring, because boring is where the magic happens. The world is full of people who start strong and quit. That's why the disciplined few end up with disproportionate results. They outlast, outbuild, and outcompound everyone else. Wealth doesn't reward flashes of brilliance, it rewards endurance. Discipline is the bridge between what you want and what you achieve, and consistency is the engine that drives you across it. Once you understand that, you stop chasing speed in the wrong ways and realize that true speed comes from never stopping. That's how wealth is attracted, not by bursts, not by luck, not by chasing every new trend, but by showing up over and over long after most people have given up. It looks simple, but it's rare. And because it's rare, it's powerful. If you can commit to relentless discipline and consistency, you'll move faster than the majority, not because you sprinted harder, but because you never stopped walking forward. And in the end, that steady pace will put you so far ahead that others will call it luck when in reality it was simply discipline all along.